genetics originally was, people looking for the one magic gene to fix, whatever illness du jour, and then make a drug from it. And, and that's great. We need that research out there, but it's obviously not working, because when we start to look at the facts that, 6 out of 10 people in America have a chronic illness. When I was introduced to SNiP, the exciting part was it wasn't scary. It was a way to really empower people. And that, as a nurse, that's always been my passion, is how can I help give the tools to make whoever is on the other side of the table feel they have control over their wellness. We see Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We see a lot of these autoimmune disorders that we don't know what causes them specifically. And we don't really have a plan. People, you go to the doctors, you spend whatever you spend, and you kind of come out with, well, let's see how it goes. And that can be really frustrating. So when you start to look at what we call actionable genes, that means these are genes that scientifically we know we can do these different types of lifestyle hacks or nutrition hacks. And that's really what our gift is we look at nutrigenomics. So we look at what nutrition, minerals, vitamins, herbs can we use to bypass little glitches in your blueprint, so to speak. When we look at the genetic actual makeup of a human, there's only about a 2% difference. And yet you look around and it's amazing how that 2% difference expresses in so many beautiful ways. And so it's really like, how can we help you know what the tools are that will help you to express your optimal being, which to me is just a really exciting thing to be able to share with folks.
Hey, welcome everybody. Here we are, another great episode of Freedom Hub's Cash Patient and business related. We've got a great guest as usual today. Before we get into any of that, I'm going to have Jim do the courtesy of introducing our guest. I want to kind of just show everybody real quick about the site, because some of it are new and it's a good refresher for others. So this way you can see what we're up to. This is the site, your-mp.com. And when you come over here, you can read through. There's a lot of great stuff to learn about in here. But the one we're focused on today is the Media Hub. So if you click on that, it brings you to the page. It shows the 2 shows of the week. Take it down a little further. It shows you the guests and a little descriptor of what's going to be going on. A little further down, you see who's in the pipeline coming up. It's going to be very interesting. We got a presidential candidate coming up next Thursday. So that's going to be fun. And then most importantly, here's where we want you to share. So at the bottom, this is today's show, Health, Business, and Politics, and we post it on BitChute, Brighteon, sometimes YouTube if they allow us, and Rumble. And so what I would encourage you to do is go to every one of these channels and subscribe, even if you only prefer one over the other, just so it helps us on our trending and all that good stuff. So, and then you'll see there's a wealth of other prior shows on there. And sadly, a lot of this stuff could be a year-old video. It's still current. The problem's still here. So just because it's not today's meeting doesn't mean it's not lost any importance. So that's where you want to find out what's going on. And so as you can see here, let me back up for one moment. Here we've got this guest for today. Can you get to the root cause of illness without looking at genetics? That's going to be exciting. So Jim, why don't you do the honors?
Welcome everybody. Okay, yeah, we do. I met Andreanna, worked with her and the Bioregulatory Medicine Institute in Mexico, filmed 2 of her talks just like 4 or 5 months ago. And they were great. I was really impressed. And I wanted to have her on the show to share this again with us. Andy comes from, she's been in genetics probably since the 90s, somewhere early 90s, and taught functional medicine, German new medicine, that sort of thing with the Klinghardt Academy, Dietrich Klinghardt, some of you know. Let's see what else. worked with special needs, autistic children, special needs children for probably the last decade also. And and she's a good cook. No, I'm just kidding. But she gave a great talk, and the presentation today. She's now working with SNiP's Nutrigenomics, nutrition, SNiP's nutrition. Yeah, Nutrigenomics. It's all in there. I get with those words. But there's a lot going on now in the world with so many people are sick, and there's so much chronic disease in our country. We know that. Everybody's looking for solutions. Genetics definitely plays a part. We're just not that sure how. So that's where people like Andy come in to figure out what your genes look like, how you can fix things. She'll go more into this. So the question, can you get to the root cause of illness without looking at genetics? I'm going to guess the answer is probably no. But I will turn it over to you, Andy, to tell us more about this fascinating subject and important.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you guys. And I was thinking a lot about how to make this simple and easy. And one of the ways that I like to do it is because sometimes genetics is scary for some people, because genetics originally was, people looking for the one magic gene to fix, whatever illness du jour, and then make a drug from it. And, and that's great. We need that research out there, but it's obviously not working, because when we start to look at the facts that, 6 out of 10 people in America have a chronic illness, and yet we spend more money than anybody on healthcare. And you start looking at, and that cost of expenditure is crazy, because, you could look at statistics and they'll give you these huge numbers, 4.3 trillion. Like, I don't even know how many zeros are in a trillion. But the average cost, it's not like every one person has that. And I've seen so many people be just devastated with healthcare costs. And for me, I was really excited to watch a person who I love dearly really dig into genetics and find a way of just foundationally supporting themselves. So when I was introduced to SNiP, the exciting part was it wasn't scary. It wasn't a doomsday message of you're going to get this illness and then, get ready to just worry about that indefinitely. It was a way to really empower people. And that, as a nurse, that's always been my passion, is how can I help give the tools to make whoever is on the other side of the table feel they have control over their wellness, and really encourage a state of wellness thought instead of illness management. And, one of the things that was exciting for me is as I started delving into this business with Kim Ressler, our CEO is amazing. She had her own health journey of undiagnosed autoimmune problems. And, we see Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We see a lot of these autoimmune disorders that we don't know what causes them specifically. And we don't really have a plan. People, you go to the doctors, you spend whatever you spend, and you kind of come out with, well, let's see how it goes. And that can be really frustrating. So when you start to look at what we call actionable genes, that means these are genes that scientifically we know we can do these different types of lifestyle hacks or nutrition hacks. And that's really what our gift is we look at nutrigenomics. So we look at what nutrition, minerals, vitamins, herbs can we use to bypass little glitches in your blueprint, so to speak. So genetics really is the roadmap of how you personally work. And it's the difference between, am I a fancy race car like a Bugatti, or am I a diesel truck? Both are great tools, but you have to treat them differently. You have to give them different fuel so that they can do their functions. They have to have a different, lifestyle to function to their optimal capacity. And that's how us people are too. So knowing what kind of food are you going to do better with? Knowing what kind of exercise are you going to do better with? How are you going to manage stress? Knowing these little processes really helps that individual take charge of how they're epigenetically going to support their lifestyle. Because we know when you look at folks who live long, healthy lives in the blue zones, there's certain factors that they have, but there's also certain genetics that they share. And sometimes it's amazing to me how people are so much more alike than different. When we look at the genetic actual makeup of a human, there's only about a 2% difference. And yet you look around and it's amazing how that 2% difference expresses in so many beautiful ways. And so it's really like, how can we help you know what the tools are that will help you to express your optimal being, which to me is just a really exciting thing to be able to share with folks. So I thought I'll get a little bit, it's always a little embarrassing to share your own genes, right? But I don't want to break anyone else's trust. So I'm going to just show you, like when I did, what's great is this is super simple. You do a cheek swab, a little kit comes to you, you rub a Q-tip inside of your mouth, you turn your name and birth date and, whatever your biological birth assignment of sex was into a code. So you're completely anonymous. And what's great is you can also change your name. Like I decided I didn't really want to put my child's name out there in the ethers. So we just gave her a new name and we made up a portal and so we have access on, our secure server. And let me see if I can pull this up and show you. So about 21 days later, you'll get your results. And there's a couple things, like I'm a little bit Michener-esque, so I want every little detail of every nuance, but not everybody wants that. So we also came up with this little thing that is basically let me see if I can move this. This is our summary. Can you see that okay? So the summary is, SNPs basically stands for single nucleotide polymorphism, which is just a fancy word that is to say your recipe has a little glitch in it. One parent giving you a typo in your recipe would give you a yellow. Both parents giving you a typo in your recipe would give you red. And that generally means that this gene function can be decreased from anywhere from 50 to 75 to 100%. And so knowing that means you're going to have to pay attention to those different areas with a different kind of care than if you didn't have that particular typo in your recipe, which is basically telling you how you're going to function. And so I like this little version for those who don't want to be overwhelmed with too many words, because it's really clear. Red is going to be your highest priority and yellow is going to be your secondary priority. We also have green, which is the wild type, which means you don't have any mutations in your genetic map. However, these are all actionable genes, like we said, which means your lifestyle is also going to affect how you express with these different functions. And these different genes are going to affect every system within your body, from your brain and mood to how your immune system works, how your inflammatory system responds, how your gut responds, your cardiovascular, how you hold on to weight or don't hold on to weight. And, we've tried to really make it simple because then you could put it back together with it. And the other thing that is a little bit different, you can kind of see here on the bottom, is that all of these different systems, because we assume most people are trying to do the basics of lifestyle, which is hydrate, which is have community, laughter, joy. It is eating healthy organic food. It is moving our bodies. It is not being so overwhelmed with stress that's, keeping our neurotransmitters pumping all the time. And, for the other side of that, we also do a custom compounding support to help these genes, again, like we talked about, those vitamins, those minerals, those herbs, that nutritional support that's going to bypass the lack of capacity of these genes. And so this is the short version. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a new share and see if I can get to, excuse me for just a second here. I want to get into a different page for you, and it is hiding in my F11. So with code complex, which is basically 19 SNPs that are going to, let me go over here. And let me come, oops. Sorry about that. My technological capacities here are slower than I would hope them to be. I want to go back to find the screen share and go here.
Is that a gene function?
It is, but you know what? I'm overriding my slow comp T, which would make me feel stressed about that. So this is, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And so this is what I love this one because this really makes it simple. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it talks about what is a single nucleotide polymorphism. And it talks about the fact that we never sell your genetic information. We never share your genetic information. And we've tried to keep it as simple as driving. Green means good. This gene works the way it's supposed to. Yellow means 1 deviation from normal. And red means 2 deviations from normal. So when we start to look at this, oh, these are just, HIPAA compliance, and then everything is manufactured here in the States, and it is all third-party tested for cleanliness. We don't want to be adding chemicals or heavy metals, pesticides, these things in. It defeats the purpose of optimizing your genes. So this is my genetic outcome here. And when we look at APOB, this is how I transport cholesterols. And a lot of people think about that just as, your good and bad cholesterol levels, but you think it's also about our brain, our nerves, all of the different cell walls in the body. And you can see I don't really do that very well. Red and yellow kind of gives you an idea of what my genetic makeup is on this first page. ATP5C1 is about how do we make gasoline to run the energy within our cell capacity. And I can do it, just not as well as if it were green. So for this, I'm going to have to think about things like intermittent fasting or doing a little bit of HIIT exercise to get that mitochondrial supported. Now, CompT is one of my favorite SNPs because this is a window into how I perceive the world and how I respond to the stress of the world. And there's no good or bad gene. It's just what is. And so when you have what's called a slow CompT, like I do, I have a red one, you tend to break down stress hormones slower than the other person. And so you ruminate about things. You are scanning the environment for all the details. And, in my line of profession, that's a good thing because I can look and hold on to details and remember them, and it makes me also know, hey, you're going to be a little more sensitive than someone who has yellow or green. And our green people are more of we call this the warrior, that's a green, or the worrier, that's a red. And so it gives us an idea of how I'm going to perceive the universe, which is important when I'm trying to motivate myself. We have several different inflammatory genes, and we know that I always think of inflammation is the root cause of all chronic illness. So knowing that I have C-reactive protein, I'm going to inflame super well. And so I can monitor this along with the other 2 that are in here and see how are you doing. I love the genes we chose also. Many of them we can monitor with lab work, so to see how you're expressing first and foremost symptoms. And, we share symptom surveys, but your symptoms in your lab work are going to let you know how are your genes expressing. So inflammation is definitely a moderate problem here. when we go to CYP11B2, this is what I think about as fluid volume. It's electrolytes. How do I hold on to salt? How do I let go of it? This is very important for cellular function. And I will tend to have, because I'm red, I will tend to have a little higher blood pressure problems. Fluid, I will get pitting edema, swelling, these kinds of things. So it just means when I'm going to be in situations that will do those types of things, I have to be extra careful. Whereas if I were green, I could get away with a little bit less tenacity with that. So then detox genes, because we live in a world that we are not really designed for, and the sheer amount of chemicals and heavy metals and toxins being pumped into our air, our water, our food, these are really important genes to me. And we have multiple detoxification and antioxidant genes we look at. So EPHX1 is specifically how I deal with pesticides and chemicals. And you could see I don't. So it's going to make me know I'm going to have to do those things that help me sweat. I'm going to have to do those things that help me detox more effectively because I genetically don't. And then here, oh, I love this one. So FTO is our wonderful, how do we store our fat? And we know many of these chemicals. So EPHX1 usually takes a toxin and surrounds it with fat and then helps it. That's phase 1 detox. And then later on, we'll get into phase 2 detox. But I don't do that process well. And then with my fat and how I hold on to fat, that's these FTO genes. They're one step from normal. So this is going to tell me, this is going to affect the ghrelin and the leptin centers in my brain, which tells me, am I satisfied when I eat or am I not satisfied when I eat? And I think of it as ghrelin as gremlins. It's going to tell you, keep eating, keep eating, keep eating. You're not satisfied. Even though you've eaten plenty of food to be satisfied, your brain isn't getting the message. So people with this SNiP will tend to crave fatty, salty, sugary foods, and they'll tend to eat 25% more of them. And although for some people a keto diet is really good, for me, I need low carbohydrate, but high protein. If I get more protein with this genetic quirk, I will do much better in being able to feel satisfied and not be excessively eating. FUT2, now this is really important because we know that our microbiome is where we make a lot of our brain chemicals as well as our immune modules. And so FUT2 helps create an enzyme that will feed my good bugs and it will help me convert my foods into B12. So I have that there for, to prevent anemia, to support methylation. And you can see I don't do that. Now, another little thing with this is I can't break down carbohydrates so well. So while my FTO is telling me eat more carbs, I can't break them down in my gut. So trying to do a vegetarian diet, I get a lot more gas and bloating. So you have to kind of adjust for these things. It's not to say you can't do it. You just need support doing it. Now, here we are, GSTP1. This is how our cells make glutathione, which is that master antioxidant. And again, and this is phase 2. So this is how my liver gets rid of those packaged up toxins, and it struggles to do it. So I know maybe I'm going to need to do some more liver support that way to kind of help keep it in check. But I know in my code complex supplement, I'm going to get trimethylglycine. I'm going to get different herbs that are going to help that function happen. So I'm not worried about it. It's just information to me. Interleukin-6 is another one of those inflammatory markers that happens when our body is onslaughted with an illness or an invader. And yay, finally a green. And so I do this inflammation process really well. MTHFR, probably one of the most popular genes around. And, and it gets so much more publicity than I think. Yes, methylation is critical. And yes, it is very important because this is It's going to help keep homocysteine, which is another inflammation marker in our body, into a balance. It's very important for folate conversion. And it's important because this is the master turning on and off genes and turning on and off inflammation and recycling what we call methyl donors. And so this particular version of it, I have a green, which is fantastic. And then down here, I have a yellow. So I can halfway do it. And we'll look at some other components with that. The biggest thing I talk to people about MTHFR is, for folks that are trying to conceive, this is a very important one for conception and healthy birth. It's also pretty much connected with about anything you can think of: mood, immunity, your heart, everything that way. And one of the problems is our government decided to start adding fortification to our food. Since our food is, going down in its quality as far as how many minerals and how much nutrients we have due to, kind of crazy farming practices, unless you're growing your own food. And so when you take folic acid, which is a synthetic form of folate, instead of just eating green leafy vegetables and the different components that you get folate from, it actually blocks those receptors. And so it makes it so you can't do the conversion because you genetically already are stressed. And even though I only have one parent that gave me this dysfunction, my ability to do this methylation has gone down by 75%. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, okay, I got to pay attention to this. MTRR is another component that's very important for homocysteine levels. And you can see I'm red here. So an interesting thing with this, one of the biggest things here is I need sleep. If I don't get 9 hours of sleep, I'm, a little bit wiped out, because that really helps this genetic function happen more effectively. And again, I'm a little bit more sensitive to things like glyphosate, and I don't digest as well. Because if you look at trimethylglycine is betaine. And so it's very important for the digestive process. So especially now into menopause, it's another factor that I have to kind of support that digestive process, because I know genetically I'm not gonna. Now, NQO1 is, yay, green. I got to celebrate my greens. And so this is how my body makes CoQ10. And CoQ10 is a nutrient that is critical for brain and heart function and for mitochondrial support. And some people, if you have a mutation here, you might need the oxidized form versus the unoxidized form. And me, I do good with both forms. And that's important. So if you think of vitamin E and vitamin K, that's also really important about coagulation. And we want that blood to be flowing simply. Now, PON1 and SOD2, these are getting into that oxidative stress. PON1 is specifically how our lipids in our body rust. Oxidation is similar to how a car would rust if it's left out into the rain. And so I do very good with this. Whereas SOD2 is how do my cells respond to the free radicals, that every cell has to make energy. And in that process of making energy, you make byproducts. Those byproducts are called free radicals. Now, free radicals can damage those tissues inside of the cell. And so I have a yellow with this. One of the wonderful things is we know spirulina, the mana algae, it helps to create the enzyme that this gene is supposed to make. So by adding that into my daily regime with my code supplement, I'm going to support that internal stress that could damage my cells and lead to problems if I just left it alone. Now, tumor necrosis factor alpha is another one of those inflammatory markers we can measure within our lab work as well. And luckily, I do that green, I do that well. Now, VDR is very interesting because this vitamin D is actually a hormone. We think about it as a vitamin, but it's not. And it's a very powerful hormone that affects over 10% of all the genes. Every gene in your body has a certain dependency, and it's not only for our immune system, our brain system, our inflammation, turning our methylation on and off. And this is specifically how your body will allow the vitamin D into the cell. So you might have a good blood level, which we do recommend people measure, because they've done studies, and we know that if you have a blood level between 65 and 70 nmol, you reduce all-cause mortality. So anything that could kill you, the chances of that killing you go down exponentially when your vitamin D levels are appropriate in your body. And I always giggle because people are like, well, even in Florida, I'm like, are you gardening naked for at least 2 hours a day? Because we don't, we're not out in nature the way we used to just get enough from our resource of being exposed to the sun. And then some of us have trouble converting it from the sun and transporting it to the cell and letting it into the cell. So this is an important thing to kind of monitor. So as you go down in your report, you'll be able to see that there's a section that will tell you, well, more information about this gene. It'll also tell you many different kinds of what exactly is in your supplement. And what I love is we've also put in these little hyperlinks that will take you to all of the studies that tell you why green tea extract will support this, why grapeseed skin will support this. So this isn't just, our scientists saying this. These are all third-party research projects. Most of them are NIH, because we wanted to just keep it very simple and not have folks, argue about European studies, although they're extremely helpful as well. And it's going to show us, well, these are all of the different things that are going to be in your code complex to help you. And then here's some dietary recommendations. Here's some other types of epigenetic things that you can do to also support this gene expression within yourself. And it's going to go through all of those different genes that we just discussed and tell you more things about it. And one of the ones, and here's like our CoQ10. CoQ10 is one of the most purchased supplements, and it can often be extremely expensive. And we really wanted to get the highest quality at the most affordable amount. And it shows you some of those different components. Now I'm going to jump over to another section here that's going to show you. So no two people are exactly alike. And the cool thing that SNiP does is we take those actionable genes that we've measured on the person. Although we measure almost 100 different genes and we give you access to that data, you can't compound on 100 genes. You'd have to be taking a big tub of everything each time. So we picked the 19 heavy hitting actionable genes that are associated with every system in the body. And you can kind of see it comes with my name on it, and it's going to tell me exactly what's in my supplement. And for every single, so you can kind of see we've got all the basic nutrients in here. But then where it gets interesting is, as a filler, we use this amazing combination of our base blend that is basically prebiotics, fruits and vegetables, and different kinds of nutrients that we know people need. Broccoli extract, broccoli powders. Now, when we get into each of these proprietary blends, because I have different mutations than, say, Jim has, I'm going to get a different amount of nutrients. So there are over 400 million options that our technology can create. And it's going to tell me, well, for that lipid transport, here are the nutrients that are going to help support you to have a balanced lipid transport. For that adrenal blood pressure gene, here's what we're going to do to support that. Now, AC11 has to be this blend is one of my favorite blends, because this actually lengthens telomeres. There have been studies, and telomeres are like the shoelace caps on your DNA. They keep our DNA from unwinding and being havoc inside of our body. And they are an indicator of your biological age, and many people's biological age does not match their actual age. So by giving AC11 and boswellia and astaxanthin, I'm going to support that telomere lengthening happening inside of my every DNA cell in my body. You know, we knew that I had trouble with the detox, so here are the detox supports, and you can see we also have the sulforaphane broccoli sprout extract on top of what we had above with the full, broccoli. Again, for that methylation and that MTRR, we've got my trimethylglycine. For my vitamin D, we're going to have a combination of D3. For my fat cells, we've got different kinds of nutrients that are going to support me having a healthy body mass index. And it's super important because fat stores a lot of very dangerous toxins. So we want to keep that at a good level. And also it takes a lot of circulation. So that's a lot more stress on the heart. So I want to be kind of watching that out. We're going to add in SAMe, which is that methyl donor, the universal donor to support that gut gene. We're going to add in that spirulina to support that oxidative stress gene. We're going to support that methylation so that I can turn those genes on and off, and I can support that inflammatory process. And then we're also going to support me making energy for running all the functions. And it goes down through each of them, the liver, the inflammation, your CoQ10. So it's been, an amazing adventure in trying to create simplicity and elegance and livability. Because people used to show up with like a suitcase full of supplements and an Excel sheet to try to explain when and how to take that. And that's just not really a very livable, sustainable process for long. So I've been really just pleased to be part of the team to help bring this innovation to us and make things a lot easier for folks and affordable, because I would hear from patients many times, well, I'm spending $1,000 or $2,000 on these 50 bottles of things I'm taking, whereas this can provide a solution for as little as, $149 a month. So it's trying to empower people with the knowledge of how you work. How does what kind of fuel do you need? Where are your strengths? Where are your challenges? Because time and energy take focus. And in this way, we're not focusing on things that aren't going to give us that biggest shift in our bodies.
Fantastic. What's really great is you've really crossed that last bridge because, everybody sort of knows a little of what you're describing, but it's the practicality aspect that's always missing. Like you said, you're carrying around 2 suitcases of stuff, assume you can afford it. So if you can fix the pricing a little bit, but more importantly, give something that's simple, because I myself have done stuff through the years and, when you're supposed to do a shake so many times a day, you end up missing it. So you've missed all those nutrients you're supposed to gather because you had to skip a drink or two. So yeah, that's a great little thing you've solved.
Well, and I love it's one box, and it's got my name on it. It's mine.
Real quick before we move forward, just to draw everyone's attention, in the chat box is a link and a way you can get a special pricing if you want to tap it. We'll send it again later, but continue, Jim.
Yeah. I'm waiting for you to open up in Turkey so I can get them here. Or maybe we can open up here for you, open the country. It's funny, and everybody use the raise hand icon. If you have questions, I know some of you have things on your mind, so please join the conversation. I did a 23andMe a long time ago, actually for a reason, with a genomics guy, and who went through stuff like you did. But what really bothers me about this, and maybe other programs, not what you're doing, is I get emails from like 23andMe, and I see it with other companies, your tendencies towards disease. Jim, we found this, you might, get heart problems. Are you sleeping? And everything's negative. I mean, sure. I think so. What you're doing sounds great. I mean, you want to know, sure, where we can help build things up. But first of all, thank you for not sending things saying you are going to, like have heart disease. But everything should be positive. And I still am waiting for, I don't know if you test for this, like if there's a genius gene or something, like, wow, your genes, you could be really smart or something. There might be other
I think
things in it.
that's the brain and mood. So I didn't show it today and for simplicity, but when you go into the brain report and you go into some of these other reports, it definitely shows you brain function and capacity. And, there's procrastination genes, there's sleep genes, there's genes that show us, are we going to be able to process lactose or gluten? And instead of arguing with people over dietary, it's like, well, genetically you struggle with this ability, so what you choose to do with it is yours. Like I love barbecue, but because of my PON1 and my EXPX, can't have it every day. So it's those things where it empowers us to know, okay, if I'm going to choose to do this, what do I have to do to make it so I don't get stressed by it?
Right. Let me, Sharon, I see Sharon's hands up. So let's have our naturopathic attendee join us, and the floor is yours, Sharon.
Well, hi, thank you. Yeah, this is wonderful. I'm very familiar with this type of work and Klinghardt and German New Medicine. It's really fascinating. I was wondering if is there an epigenetic component to SNPs? Because I got my 23andMe numbers many years ago, almost maybe 10 years. But I've changed my diet and done a lot of things, and I've switched mainly to diet and food and lifestyle as opposed to supplements. But I've never felt better, and most of it is because I was able to do all that. Now, have you noticed if someone can change their diet and lifestyle? Have you done a before and after with it? Is there any studies that show differences in their DNA?
So it's your DNA, what you're born with, you die with. So it's not so much that your DNA is going to change. So that's the nice thing, is you test one time and you're done. But this is where those symptom surveys and your lab work shows how are you expressing, your DNA. And all of these, every SNP that we focus in, is you can support it epigenetically, which is what you're talking about: diet, lifestyle, community, water, air, all of those different qualities. And unfortunately, I think that the world has become so toxic on so many levels, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically, that most people are not able to get ahead of that. Doesn't mean you can't get ahead of that, but it's just one of those, that's why we're all like, hey, let's stop watching the news. Let's stop, or at least not start it first thing in the morning, like get off of the screens. So every single section will have some of those epigenetic supports, like what kind of foods should you have, what kind of, how to do exercise, other different things. Like I had no idea until I love taking a bath, and taking a bath is actually good for cardiovascular health. So we have those little hacks that are in there that are separate from the supplement. And the supplement is more like a foundational support. So if you don't have the best diet, if you haven't been able to manage those epigenetic things and be happy and healthy with where you're at, it's a support for those folks. But definitely epigenetics is critical to all of these.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. And so if we were to go through the process and get the list of supplements, is there a way to actually, like some of the supplements I wouldn't want to take because I'd like to do it based on diet or whatever. If there's there a way to say, okay, this is what you're recommending, but can you take this out and take that out and that sort of thing?
Great question. So yes, you can take out, so it's very interesting. The process is our machine that connects with the laboratory to kind of custom compound, because these are made once a month. It's not, we don't have boxes of this stuff sitting on the shelf.
Right.
It's made for the person each time new. You can pull out what are called like where you saw we had like the APO blend. You can pull that blend out if you want to do it a different way, and you can adjust those things. But there's only, because of the way that it's designed, that's how you would pull it out.
Mhm. Okay, that sounds fascinating. And Jeff, I didn't see the link in the chat, but so I would like to
I
link
will
that up.
resend it here. No
It's
problem.
at the
Of
very
course, I posted
top,
it.
Sharon.
Oh,
SNiP
okay.
Nutrition / Freedom Hub. Yeah.
Okay,
there's
and
a
then I
code-
just had
Yes,
another
certainly is.
quick question. You were talking about inflammation, like the root cause of all illness is inflammation. So have we looked into what is the root cause of inflammation? You know, what's
Well,
causing
genetically, yeah, I mean, genetically speaking, you could see on mine, we look at interleukin 6, CRP, and tumor necrosis factor alpha and methylation. And there's many genes that are connected with that. And so again, genes are like a symphony. They play together and make this beautiful music. It's never just one factor. And so how you deal with stress is going to change your inflammation. How your gut microbiome works is going to change your inflammation. There's multiple different factors. And so depending on what system you want to focus in on, there are whole reports about basically every system in the body that are included in our testing.
Oh, wonderful. And so as a
And
practitioner, could I get an account to share this with my clients?
most definitely. And then also, because my passion is empowerment, right?
Mhm.
We have done many different written materials, videos. We have a little recording for every one of the 11 reports. You know, I'm always we've got a beautiful blog site that's got data you can share. And so we are really here to help you serve you and you to serve your people. And so we'd love to have you join us and let us know if there's things that you need. I'm a little bit of a tell me what you need, because I like to find ways to make it easier for every person to share.
You've got lovely mother energy.
Definitely, mama. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course.
Uh,
We'll
I'm
get some
gonna-
other questions going here.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm going to see if Pam from Genexi is around. I see her has joined the call. I was thinking they'd make a great team, maybe these two companies.
Totally.
If she has any
There
questions.
she is.
Oh my
There's
gosh, you
Pam.
guys are awesome. Literally, while you're talking, I went over and signed up for an account, and I can't wait to. I'm really curious to see what your genetic test looks like, and if it matches the results I received from some of our other partner companies. And yeah, I'm excited to work with you guys. So absolutely appreciate you coming on the show today, and look forward to working with you more. I'll probably reach out to you after the event, after the podcast is over, and we'll chat some more.
Oh, please do, because again, there's a lot of people that need our help. And if we can in any way hold hands and do it together, we always find that really rewarding.
I love that. So I guess I do have one question for you though. So I see this as sort of an all-encompassing, like we do the test or the patient or the person will do the test and then receive the supplements. What is there any other like coaching or information or helpful tips for that particular person?
There's a lot of different components that are in the different reports. We have a YouTube channel, we have a blog. There's many things about, I have written many blogs about how to hack your sleep, how to really look at hydration, how to pick the right kind of exercise. So there's definitely videos, audios, and written materials that way. And, we are working on trying to figure out how to do the coaching into things, because I'm used to coaching the physicians to coach their patients. And so, we're really just as a blossoming company trying to put all those pieces together, and it's all evolving.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I'd like to throw something in. Yeah, I'm live. Inflammation. I think, years ago I filmed a physicist, Bill Tiller, talking about background radiation. Something like, and this is 20 years ago or 50, that there is the amount of background radiation around us is 50,000 times greater than like a base level, what it should be, like zero pretty much. Well, different from the sun and so forth. But it's only gone up with military communications, broadcast, everything, right? And our wireless routers, cell phones. And that puts stress on the body, and the stress creates inflammation. So as you were saying earlier, a lot of people can't like catch up or keep up just with what's going on. And I mean, if you could, I don't know if are there any genes that have anything to do with that, with the EMFs? Is there any correlation? It's certainly, I mean, the best way is obviously to mitigate the problem. Somehow, block it or use protection where you live, or your routers, shut off things at night, right? You don't need the extra radiation. So any thoughts on that?
Well, there's definitely been some really interesting research out of Italy on the use of rosemary. And, that's one of the things that we like to put into it. But also, this is where grounding, like spending that time, I'm really blessed because I live next to a reserve. So I could go hug a tree. I could go lay in the grass. I could go swim in the ocean. All of these variables really help to bring it back down. And and it's also that part of supporting that methylation, supporting that inflammation, because inflammation in itself has a very important role in our body to, help stop bleeding, help bring on immune responses. It's turning it on and turning it off appropriately, so that it's, nothing's all good or all bad. It's all in the right timing and space. So definitely, I often have patients, use a body voltage meter to measure what is your body doing electrically. There's ways of screening for EMF, because I live with Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Boeing. You can imagine some of my patient conversations. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I know this sounds kind of far-fetched, but if you can see the subjective screening that we know body voltage should be within this range, and if it's out of this range, it's going to cause a problem. All my engineer moms and dads are not going to hack with me over that. But if it's just believe me because it's EMF, luckily there's a lot more data coming out on it. So it's a lot easier to win the argument. And I always just resort to the facts.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Someone came in. Jeff, any other thoughts or?
Well, I was just going to get back to some nitty gritty a little bit. In terms of people using those supplements, what are you seeing as an average advantage as opposed to the person with the 2 suitcases as far as cost goes?
Well, like I said, the cost is as little as $149 a month. So when you start thinking, like, I know CoQ10 products alone that cost that. And when you're getting, and it doesn't mean that if you get an infection, you might not need something for that. You might need more herbs if there's but it's going to set all your systems of your body up to work correctly. So I always tell people, a red blood cell's life cycle is 120 days. So do it for 120 days and see. Most people feel a change in their cognition, in their pain, in their autoimmunity. We've seen many patients, and I'm like, do your blood work before and do your blood work at 120 days and see. We give you a symptom tracker. I love the fact that the human brain is this beautiful device that will help us forget things. And so, you do your symptom tracker before you start, because by the time 30, 60, 90, 120 days, people forget that they weren't sleeping. Or I had a lady come up and literally kiss me because she's like, I have never pooped so well in my life. I thought I was just destined to have gas. And she's like, I was horrified to have people over, in less than a month, this, many years, decades of this problem was resolved. And it wasn't that we really were trying to attack her gut. We just foundationally supported her genes to do what they needed to do. And so it's been, and we are working with a couple of different universities to look at some studies. But right now, the key factor is always, the proof is in the pudding. How do you feel? And what are your labs doing? Because that's going to tell you, and most importantly is, how do you feel? Because I've seen a lot of folks who had beautiful lab work and felt like crap. And so that's not living the life that we want. We're designed to get to 120, but I don't want to spend the last 40 in the nursing home. I want to be chasing my kids and my grandkids, hopefully, and, that way. And so it's really about seeing how you can live your optimal life. And you still have to you can't just take a supplement and, stress and not have community. And, it's really helping you. But I also think it's helping you have enough energy to do the epigenetic things that are going to make it all blossom too, and providing space for that.
Fantastic.
I think this is great. I remember Obama talking about personalized medicine. That's where we need to go. Personalized medicine, 20 years ago. And companies like you guys and Genexi and others that are really giving people the tools to do this. Because there's a lot more than just eat a good diet, go exercise, you'll be fine, right? I mean, those days are gone, sadly, I suppose. But so I think we're coming up on the top of the hour. I don't see any other questions.
Hey, can we wait? Yeah, why
Yeah.
don't we squeeze one last one? And Sharon's got a quickie
Oh,
follow.
okay. I didn't see it just
What
popped up.
triggered in her mind.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Just a quick thing. One thing about inflammation, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Morley Robbins, but what he has found that everybody's body, especially in America, is filled with iron, and it's in the tissues, and that can relate to the stress level and the EMF. We're like this little metal magnet running around. He's going to be coming up in November on this show, but he has a protocol for helping the iron get out of the tissue and measure that. So that's quite helpful as well. Thank you.
Yes, I know him well from the autism world, and it is true. Yes, and mineral balance is critical, and how we do that is often through some of those detox pathways as well. So it'll be really fun to hear what he has to say. He's a brilliant mind.
Right. Thanks.
Excellent.
Well, why don't you tell us how people can reach you, questions, and we'll put something up definitely on our Freedom Hub site to share. So in the meantime, follow you. Are you on Instagram or?
I am in my beyond mid-50s. No. So we have snipnutrition.com, and I really like to communicate with the blog. We do have a YouTube channel, so we put out a lot of videos. I believe we have our one, thank goodness for Corey. She does the Twitter and all that other kind of stuff. I'm kind of bad with those things, but you're always welcome to, email us. There's a ton of information on the website. Practitioners, we send out, we do a lot of different educational materials and send those out. We try to do that weekly. And we're always open, support at snipnutrition.com will also, if there's things that people need or want or are curious about, we're always evolving and trying to really hone in our ability to, serve our community. And so those are the best ways to get through to us.